Now this is the racy part of my lecture, for those of you who want to come to a racy part. This is stem cells gone wild. How many of you knew that cancers have stem cells in them? Dr. Dennis Slayman, who's a friend of mine, is the chief of medical oncology at UCLA. He just was awarded one of the largest grants from the California Institute of Regenerative Medicine. That's that large bond fund that you voted on a few years back. His research is all just focused on the issue of stem cells found in cancer. He's not trying to grow and treat people with these cells, but rather to find out what is the role of these cells that are in the cancer, that are cancer stem cells. Real briefly, we think that there are two ways that cancers and stem cells may be related. Normal stem cells can differentiate into mature cells. But we believe that if some of these stem cells mutate, they can then form mutated cancer. And there are some researchers who believe that as much as 40% of lung cancer may be due to stem cells in the lung that now have mutated into cancer. So stem cells are not all good. The other possibility, of course, is that stem cells, that cancer may occur, and then stem cells may help these cancers grow. The biggest field of research right now on cancer stem cells is the area of chemotherapy resistance. This little cartoon on your left shows the difference between a tumor that is chemo-resistant and a tumor that is not chemo-resistant. The red cells are stem cells, cancer stem cells. And we believe that in tumors that seem to resist chemo, it may be that the stem cells are of higher concentration and help keep that tumor alive. Whereas other tumors, the stem cells are killed, much like the rest of the cells in the tumor. Now, with that in mind, I want to ask the question again. If we had the ideal stem cell, what it would look like? Well, I've come up with a list of things, and again, this is not my own ideas, but the ideas of a lot of big dreamers. What would be the ideal stem cell? Well, the ideal stem cell would be abundant, and it would be unlimited. It'd be easy to harvest. It wouldn't require a bone marrow biopsy. It wouldn't require the destruction of life. There would be no damage to the heart or the brain if you were trying to isolate the cells. In other words, right now we just don't think it makes sense to go biopsy the brain to get stem cells. They are doing it for the heart, but they only have to take a small amount of the heart muscle to do that. The ideal stem cell would have no ethical or moral issues. They would be easy to culture. They would be easy to differentiate or transform. They would be autologous. They would be from your body, your own body, not from someone else or from a bank. They would be economical, not only economical to harvest, they would be cheap to isolate and to use. And probably the most important thing is they would be a cell that could not turn into a cancer stem cell. Now, I want to now open your minds a little bit about, is there a cell that's close to this ideal? Well, what cells in your body are the most abundant? Well, if you're anything like me, it's fat. And believe it or not, fat has stem cells in it. What stem cells are the easiest to harvest? Well, 2 or 3 times a week, I harvest fat. It's called liposuction. What stem cells cannot turn into cancer? Adipose-derived stem cells, as far as we know, cannot turn into cancer. They are not nearly as totipotent or multipotent as, for instance, embryonic stem cells. Now, what stem cells are the most economical to harvest, grow, and to use for therapeutic purposes? Probable adipose-derived stem cells. Now, it was really the Rebar lab at UCLA that 2 of my residents worked in while they were residents, and where a lot of the work, along with a lot of work what What we now know is that adipose-derived stem cells, and that's what this fluorescent antibody-labeled picture shows, can be turned into skeletal muscle with appropriate inductive factors. It can be turned into bone. It can be turned into cartilage, cardiac muscle, nerve tissue, blood vessels, fat, and the most recent one to be shown is that you can induce adipose-derived stem cells into liver cells. For that reason, I would, if you ask me right now, what's the closest cell we have to an ideal stem cell? I think it's the adipose-derived stem cell for the reasons we talked about. Now, what are the potential stem cell uses? I don't have enough time to go through all the lists, but here is the list of diseases that are currently being researched to study with stem cells. Some of these are going to be very hard to reach and are going to be what I call the high-hanging fruit. Others are going to be very easy. For instance, the one that's definitely easy for me to do is facial aging. I am currently using fat for fat grafting the face. The problem with fat grafting the face is it doesn't work that well. Most of the fat doesn't survive. But we've found that if you take some stem cells and mix it with fat and inject that, the survival of those cells is much better. And that's probably because some of those fat-derived stem cells are turning into fat, and probably because part of them are also forming blood vessels. Another example of what I call the low-hanging fruit is arthritis. I'm working with a company from Korea right now called RNL Bio to develop a clinical trial of using fat-derived stem cells to treat arthritis. Now that may sound crazy to you, but if you get on the 405 freeway and drive south, you'll find a company down in Escondido that has been doing this in dogs for arthritis for 4 years and have clinically significant data that they've published in the veterinary literature that shows that adipose-derived stem cells work better than nonsteroidals for arthritis in the elbow of pet dogs. So the research has already been done out there for much of this. Unfortunately, in this country, even if a dog's arthritis is better, you have to prove it in humans, or else the FDA is not going to allow you to make a claim or to treat a patient that way. So real briefly, I personally feel that stem cells have an unlimited application. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on companies. I don't own any stock in any of these companies, and I'm doing that because I don't want to have any conflict of interest. But you can see there are companies in every area of stem cells that we've already discussed tonight. I've only mentioned some of the leaders here. The complete list now includes over 180 companies that are either actually doing stem cell research or in stem cell related companies. For instance, not every company is trying to do stem cell therapy. Some are making the antibodies to label stem cells. Others are making the machines to harvest them. Others are just driving the trucks to get the stem cells from one point to another, so to speak. So there's clearly an interest in industry. A lot of smart people with a lot of money are putting millions of dollars into this.